Big week for gold and Bitcoin. Gold touching its highest level in 6 years, and Bitcoin up 25% over the past week. Joining us now to discuss why some investors are turning these assets as a safe haven, treating them as a safe haven, is Brian Kelly, founder of BKCM Digital Assets and a CNBC contributor. Good to see you,
Bitcoin
BK.
lover.
Yeah.
Of course. Well,
of course.
I feel like you gotta say
BKCM Digital Assets. And
somewhat biased. Never ask a barber if you need a haircut.
Bingo.
Right?
I asked this of Anthony Pompliano yesterday, and that is, whenever you see, for instance, a drone strike in the Middle East, oil prices go up, and there is a premium to that price. Are we seeing that? Are we seeing a Bitcoin premium in the price right now because of what is going on in Hong Kong plus devaluation concerns?
To an extent we are. So for the first time, I've been on this network since 2013 talking about Bitcoin, and every time somebody has asked me whether or not Bitcoin is being traded like a macro kind of asset, I've said no, until this year. What we're seeing this year is macro funds, traditional investors are trading Bitcoin as an alternative or a supplement to gold and using it as this kind of macro hedge.
The correlation between Bitcoin and gold also is sort of undeniable. I mean, this is a stat that I pulled out yesterday. The Bitcoin-gold correlation in the past year has been 0.496. In the past 3 months, though, it's gone up to 0.827, implying a much tighter correlation between the two. But you still say it's too far to say that Bitcoin is a safe haven.
Well, so I hate using the word safe haven with an asset that is 5 times as volatile as the S&P 500. But people are, to the extent that you're using it as digital gold, people are thinking of it as that kind of safe haven.
So, Brian, here's my question. All of this has been happening with the backdrop of China, and there is this sort of assumption at the moment that a lot of this is money that's flowing out of China into Bitcoin. Is it really money flowing out of China, which, by the way, is hard to do? That's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right.
Or is it just the assumption of investors in developed countries saying to themselves, you know what, money should be flowing out of China, or this represents what this could look like in the future when money could flow out of China, therefore I'm going to push the price up, and that's what's really happening? I
think that's more than what's happening. I mean, for what we're seeing, we are seeing a lot of activity from Asia, but not necessarily in Bitcoin, in some of the other stable coins, something like a Tether. So you're seeing that, but you're right. It's very difficult to get money out of China. I think it's more speculation.
Like a capital flight situation.
It is. It's not a capital. It's a speculation about capital flight, right? So the question is, do we have a currency
war? Not in the moment, but like in the future.
Well, there is some. I mean, look at Hong Kong. You can certainly get money out of Hong Kong and get it into Bitcoin relatively easily. So there is some capital flight coming into Bitcoin.
But I think that's an interesting point you raise in terms of the activity in Asia. Asia has always been a hotbed for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. But now, with a threat that China is potentially devaluing the yuan, you've got yuan bloc countries that are afraid that their currencies will also go down in tandem. And so if you're in Japan or South Korea, for instance, right, already a hotbed for Bitcoin, you might see a little more activity. Have we seen that in the volumes there?
So we have seen a lot more activity coming from South Korea. That South Korea for a while had actually banned Bitcoin and had closed down trading, but that's opened up again. So South Korea, Vietnam, most of Southeast Asia, that's where you're really seeing the kind of capital flight coming from. And it's still, I mean, Asia, between Japan and Southeast Asia, you're talking more than 50-60% of the daily trading volume comes from there.
There's two schools of thought on whether or not Bitcoin can be a long-term safe haven. One is it can be just like gold, not much utility, and it can just build confidence. The other is we need to see more utility. It needs to be more than buying fake IDs, drugs, and illicit sex. Which camp do you
I've never done that with Bitcoin, but other people.
Which camp do you fall in?
So, you know what, I look at it as a life cycle analysis, right? So, in 2009, Bitcoin was a startup, and it's kind of gone through this phase. Where we are now is a commodity, much more like gold. Eventually, I think we'll get to the currency stage, and that's what will be used much more of a medium exchange. I do think it can still survive as digital gold. I mean, it's a $200 billion market cap today. Gold is a $10 trillion market cap, right? So even if it took 10%, you're talking about a 5x from here. So I think we will get there. It's just a life cycle.
Two questions. You're the central banker for Bitcoin. Do you like the activity where it is now? You wish it was worth less or more, okay, because of the need for it to become prevalent? And then the second question is, you're the central banker for the United States. What do you do to kill Bitcoin?
So I'll take the first question. I don't actually. The interesting thing about Bitcoin is the value is whatever the market puts on it, right? It's almost like working capital. How much working capital do you need to run the underlying business or the underlying economy? Right now, the market's telling us you need $200 billion worth of working capital. I would argue that as it grows, we're probably talking about a couple $1 trillion worth of working capital. So I think we have much higher to go in the very short term. Sure, we could drop to 6. In terms of killing it, it's very difficult, right? It's very much like the internet. But the kind of choke points, and at least where the AML KYC are the fiat on-ramps. So when you're putting
know your customer.
Yeah, anti-money laundering, know your customer. So where people are taking their U.S. dollars or their Japanese yen or their RMB or Hong Kong dollar and putting it into Bitcoin, those are the points where governments have come in and said, listen, if we are going to support it, we want to make sure that it's not being used for all the illicit things that you mentioned. And if we're not going to support it, we'll just choke it off there.